This is macOS Ken.
Wall Street weighs in ahead of Apple earnings. Apple Care 1 plus 4 countries. And OS updates are go. It is Tuesday, the 28th of July, 2026. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Coveron. Safeguard your identity and save up to 76% off with code macOS at coveron.com/macOS. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSken. Apple's third quarter fiscal year 2026 earnings are due this Thursday. Those will be capped with the usual Q&A call with analysts, though that'll be unusual due to it being Tim Cook's last time on the call as Apple CEO. But that's later this week. In the meantime, analysts are still passing up their papers ahead of Thursday's deadline. Came across 2 notes yesterday, one positive, one less so. Had Siri flip a coin for me, came up tails, so we start with the not particularly positive. Seeking Alpha wrote up a note from UBS analyst David Vogt. I gotta say, he is going to great lengths to justify his neutral rating on Apple shares. Summing up the note, Seeking Alpha had Vogt and company saying that Verizon didn't do as well on the post-paid upgrade front in the June quarter as AT&T and T-Mobile did. Big Red's postpaid upgrade rate was just under 2.6%, well below the 5-year average of 3.8%. To me, this sounds like a Verizon problem, though to Vogt, some of it rubs off on Apple. According to the note Vogt wrote, Verizon noted the roughly 20% decline in equipment revenue was driven by significantly lower upgrade volumes due to customers keeping their devices for longer and lower subsidies, a slight negative for iPhone demand, in our view. Not saying he's wrong, but that feels like a long walk. Meanwhile, he and his expect iPhone revenue of $53.3 billion for the June quarter, just beating the street's expectation of $53 billion. They're expecting units sold to come in at 56.5 million. Kind of a silly metric, that one, since Apple doesn't report units sold at this point. That said, Vogt's expectation beats the streets by over 3 million units. And yet, UBS has a neutral rating on Apple shares, as I say. Vogt's price target on the shares is $296. Apple closed yesterday at just under $337. For the more positive, we turn to the site Arabic Trader. Late last week, it had Goldman Sachs raising its price target on Apple shares by $30. For this, you pick up a pen. The piece says the higher target signals optimism for growth ahead. The way the post on the note sees it, Apple will benefit from several drivers, notably the development of new products, expansion in artificial intelligence technologies, alongside the strength of its digital services sector. Hang on a second. New products? Have you guys heard anything about new products? I'm kidding. Not only are there iPhone 18 Pro models expected in September, badia, there is also the fabled foldable iPhone. Quoting Arabic Trader, expectations related to Apple launching foldable devices have fueled investor appetite for the stock, with bets that the company's entry into the market could create a new growth cycle in device sales. From the people who brought you hype around iPhone Air. Can't remember who, by the way. Might have been Troy. I'm really not sure. But I talked to someone at MacStock this month who has an iPhone Air and absolutely loves it. I bring that up to justify my joke. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with iPhone Air, but a lot of people thought it was going to be the end-all, be-all. Turns out, it's just another good iPhone. But you know, people get excited. Quoting the report again, Investors are watching for Apple's ability to deliver innovative designs that compete with companies that have entered the foldable smartphone market before it, especially as global smartphone market growth slows. Goldman Sachs has a buy rating on Apple shares. The firm used last week's note to raise its price target on the shares from $340 to $370. Apple and Nvidia are jockeying for first again. Yahoo Finance ran a piece Monday that had the former reclaiming the world's most valuable publicly traded company title from the latter. Apple ended Monday with a market cap of $4.948 trillion to Nvidia's $4.76 trillion. Of course, at those marks, they're each just one bad/good day away from trading the title again. The thing that makes the story interesting is the yarn that is once again being spun. According to Yahoo Finance, Apple shares have climbed more than 22% year-to-date, outperforming the Magnificent Seven group, as investors increasingly view the company's restrained AI spending as a strength rather than a weakness. Once criticized for not spending more on AI, Apple has been able to avoid some of those capital expenditure pitfalls, says Jay Woods, chief market strategist at Freedom Capital Markets. I cannot wait until the dust settles on this whole thing. It's making it hard to see and breathe. You could probably say this next part with me, but like Devo, I must do what I must do and remind you that Apple's earnings report and associated call are set for this Thursday, the 30th of July. Apple will release numbers through its investor site after close of trading, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. Then at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, they'll go to the phones. Apple CFO Kevin Perek will talk folks through the numbers, while Apple CEO Tim Cook will practically smother under well wishes from analysts. You can hear the call as it happens on Apple's site. You can catch it as a podcast that afternoon or evening, and I'll do the recap thing right here on Friday. Apple Care One is hitting 4 new countries. Mac Rumors ran a piece Monday that had Apple's multiple device covering service launching in Australia, France, Germany, and the UK 1 week from today, Tuesday, the 4th of August. Launched in the US a year ago, the piece says Apple Care One includes all Apple Care Plus benefits, including unlimited repairs for accidental damage subject to a per-incident fee, 24/7 priority tech support, and theft and loss protection for iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch. The service covers up to 3 devices as part of a single monthly subscription. Additional devices can be added for an additional fee. Devices up to 4 years old can also be covered, provided they're not busted already. You can find more info about Apple Care One on Apple's site. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, CoverOn, a single service to protect your identity and finances. I got an email from a news publication the other day under the subject line, "Everything's a scam now." Ironically, they wanted me to click links and pay for a subscription to access the content. Still, message received. Scams today hit hard and fast. The Federal Trade Commission says Americans reported losing more than $15.9 billion to fraud last year, up from $12.5 billion the year before that. CoverOn can help. It monitors your financial activity and lets you know when something looks weird. And if money is taken, CoverOn provides fraud insurance and recovery support, so you're not out there by yourself. Credit monitoring, dark web surveillance, identity theft recovery. Things we don't know we need until after the worst has happened. That's what CoverOn brings to the table. Find out more and use code macOS for up to 76% off at coveron.com/macOS. Don't wait for the worst to happen. one scam can cost you everything. Use code macOS for up to 76% off at coveron.com/macOS. COVERON. Coveron, a single service to protect your identity and finances. Use code macOS for up to 76% off at coveron.com/macOS. Whoever stated as fact that the next round of OS updates from Apple would be released this week was spot on. blankOS 26.6 was released to the masses on Monday. As expected, it did not bring much in the way of new features, but a ton of stuff under the hood. For a number of releases, Apple Insider pointed to the indexing work blankOS 26.6 is doing to prepare for the smarter Siri coming in blankOS 27. Engadget summed that up in one post, saying iOS 26.6 includes some key optimizations to the Spotlight Index, which is a comprehensive record of all the photos, texts, apps, and other key information Siri would need to access. Being on iOS 26.6 should make it quicker to take advantage of the new bells and whistles than iOS 27. The update process was apparently taking some beta testers a week to complete from the previous operating system. So come for the indexing, stay for the security fixes. Or vice versa. A piece from Mac Rumors says the full slate of blankOS 26.6 updates patches hundreds of security flaws. How many hundreds? Many hundreds. According to the report, iOS 26.6 and iPadOS 26.6 address nearly 90 security issues. macOS Tahoe 26.6 tackles over 130. watchOS 26.6 gives over 80 vulnerabilities the business. tvOS 26.6 goes after over 80 security vulnerabilities, and visionOS 26.6 has 80 plus vulnerabilities addressed as well. For those of you on older versions of macOS, by which I mean those of us, Apple has done some fixer-uppers for Sonoma and Sequoia. After 7 release candidates, a piece from 9to5Mac says Apple has officially released macOS Sonoma 14.8.8 and macOS Sequoia 15.7.8. Each addresses nearly 140 vulnerabilities, according to the report. Apple says the updates provide important security fixes and are recommended for all users. And thus was my borderline righteous indignation swept away. I worry now over what will fill my rage space. Don't worry, I'll think of something. Here's something you don't see every day, but you could starting yesterday. 9to5Mac says podcast aggregator Pocket Casts has built and released a new app for Apple TV. The company's announcement talks about podcasts being a morning to night thing, going to work, working at work, doing stuff around the house. Then they imply it all falls apart at the television. Your podcasts don't have a real home there, according to the company. Enter the free app for Apple TV. Same up next, says the company. Same history, same place in every episode, room to room. Available now in the App Store for Apple TV. Pocket Cast says a similar app for Android TV is coming soon. It all sounds pretty cool, though. I'm having trouble figuring out how to get my 50-inch LG TV in my pocket. The hype machine that is San Diego Comic-Con may be over, but the hype itself never ends. 2 bits of news around Apple TV to wrap the day, both from 9to5Mac. First, something I missed over the weekend, an end date for Silo. While we had heard that the dystopian drama would end with its 4th season, we hadn't heard when that would hit. Now we have. 9to5Mac had Apple posting to the Heil site over the weekend in a message they could have easily copied and pasted to Mastodon but didn't. The Cupertino streamer said, "The end is near. The fourth and final season of Silo premieres summer 2027. That is kind of surprising. As the piece points out, it's become common in the streaming era for multiple years to pass between new seasons of a show. That tends to be especially true for higher budget sci-fi fare like Silo. 9 to 5 Mac says Apple is working to narrow those gaps. In Silo's case, the piece says both seasons 3 and 4 were set in motion at the same time and shot back to back. Of course, they can't or don't do that for every show. For example, there's no telling when the next season of Foundation will grace us with its visual presence. See also Severance, though there is an update on that one. The other piece I mentioned from 9 to 5 Mac had Ben Stiller, one of the top creatives behind Severance, tweeting a message on the Heil site that was retweeted by Apple TV. Stiller posted a low-res pic of what appeared to be two of the series' main characters running through one of the show's interminable hallways. That was accompanied by a message from one of the show's in-world powers that be: to return to work is to return home. Apple TV's accompanying message: please frolic in moderation. So, I guess they're back to shooting. 3 years passed between Season 1 and Season 2 of Severance, according to 9 to 5 Mac, which goes on to do a tiny bit of math. If production on Season 3 lasts between 6 months and 9 months, and another half year is added for post-production, there's a decent chance we'll see Severance return in the fall of 2027. That would bring it in just a few months under the 3-year mark. Star Trek The Next Generation did 176 episodes in 7 years. 175 if you take out the one clip show they did. I'm not saying Severance isn't good. I will say it's not scotch. It doesn't get better the longer you wait. I just figured out what I'm having for lunch. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Coveron. Safeguard your identity and save up to 76% off with code macOS at coveron.com/macOS. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOSken at mastodon.social. You can also send me an email, info@macosken.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Pitter patter, let's get at her.